Left for dead on a sun-scorched planet, Riddick fights to survive against the alien predators. When more dangerous threats appeared and he found himself struggling, Riddick had no choice but to activate an emergency beacon that attracted not only a ship filled with mercenaries, but also another ship captained by a man from Riddick's past. 5 years after Kyra's death, Riddick became the new Lord Marshal of the Necromongers. But Riddick knew that there were more people who wanted him dead than to become their Lord Marshal, so he started looking for a way out, for a new planet to move to. While he was resting in his room, one of his consorts approached him and began seducing him. Suddenly they heard rustles from outside the room, and the consort suggested that he check it, but he saw that nothing was happening, and the consort stabbed him from behind, intending to kill him but failing. A while later, Vako entered the room with some of his men and told Riddick about a planet called Furia, a place that Riddick wanted to go to. Vako stated that he knew where Furia was and offered to bring Riddick there. In return, Vako wanted transcendence. Riddick easily agreed, giving the title of Lord Marshal to Vako and leaving for Furia with Crone, Vako's aide, and a group of necromancers as his guides. Upon arriving at a desolate planet, Riddick realized that it wasn't Furia and killed the Necromongers. Crone destroyed the ground Riddick was standing on and caused a landslide, causing Riddick to fall and get buried under the debris. Riddick woke up and emerged from the debris with a broken leg. He fixed his broken leg and yelped in pain, which seemed to have attracted the attention of jackal-like aliens. Riddick crawled backwards and let himself fall into the water, waiting for the jackals to leave. Once the predators had left, Riddick went inside a cave and washed himself up with the water pouring down from above the rocks. He noticed a passage and was curious about it when the jackals arrived. That's when Riddick realized that the cave was filled with mud aliens that easily killed a jackal with just one bite. Riddick turned to the small passage he had seen earlier, but was met with a bigger mud alien. So Riddick decided to just leave for the meantime, as it would be impossible for him to get the entrance with the amount of mud aliens in the cave. Riddick adopted and trained a jackal pup and captured a mud alien, whose venom he used to build immunity and construct a melee weapon. After a few days, when all his wounds had completely healed, Riddick went back to the cave and killed mud aliens, successfully reaching the passage that leads to Savannah. Riddick traveled the Savannah for years until his jackal pet grew up. One day, he found a station where he found huge traps and flyers about bounty hunters. When he noticed a rainstorm coming, he took off his goggles and looked at the rainstorm through his eyes, concluding that the rainstorm would bring a very dangerous threat that might end the whole planet he was currently on. Riddick activated the emergency beacon, and he was scanned. A ship arrived in answer to the beacon a while later, and bounty hunters stepped out of it. Santana, the leader, and Diaz, his second-in-command, entered the station and looked around for Riddick. They saw a message left by Riddick telling them to leave one ship and leave, or else they would die. Both were confused as there was only one ship there, which was theirs. Meanwhile, the other mercenaries set up outside, and Luna, the preacher of the mercenaries, was ordered by Santana to free their prisoner. Luna did as he was told, and watched as their female prisoner ran away, only to get shot by Santana. The female prisoner saw Riddick hiding behind rocks as she died. Santana then called out to Riddick, telling the latter that he had come to collect Riddick's head in a box. Another ship of professional mercenaries arrived, and out came Johns, the leader and colonel of the group. Diaz looked back at the message, now realizing why Riddick said to leave one ship and go. Unlike Santana, who was there to kill Riddick and retrieve his body so he could get the prize money, Johns wanted to capture Riddick alive so he could interrogate him about the fate of his son, William. Johns made a deal with Santana, promising that Santana could kill Riddick after he interrogated him. Santana then told Johns to store one of their ship's nodes in a cabinet in the station, as Riddick activated the beacon because he wanted a ship to leave the planet. Dahl took a node from their ship and put it in the cabinet beside a node from Santana's ship, and Santana locked the cabinet to prevent Riddick from getting the nodes. Later that night, Santana's group was outside, looking for Riddick using a machine they call a Cyclops. Riddick's jackal pet stole the Cyclops sensor and brought it to Riddick, who messed with the Cyclops, forcing Santana to turn off the machine. Santana went to swap out the sensor with Rubio, one of his men. Suddenly, Rubio accidentally stepped on a huge trap Riddick had set, trapping his legs. Santana warned Rubio to stay put. but the latter didn't listen as he was in pain, which resulted in him dying as another trap crushed him. Hearing Rubio's screams before he died, the others were alerted, while Santana couldn't move from his spot, afraid that he'd trigger another trap. His mercenaries alertly looked around for Riddick while John's team stayed in their ship. One more of Santana's men died, and another one, Falco, was pulled somewhere by Riddick. The next day, Santana asked for John's help to capture Riddick, and the team set out to search for Riddick using his jackal pet. Dahl sniped the jackal beast with a tracker, and Johns followed it to a cave. They cautiously searched the cave for Riddick, but only found Falco's body. Meanwhile, Dahl was washing up back at their ship when he heard rustles. She looked around but didn't see anyone, so she went back to washing her face. Unbeknownst to her, Riddick was outside the window right beside her, his hand slowly reaching out to her. But when Dahl stood straight, Riddick was gone, along with Dahl's small mirror. When Dahl went out of the bathroom, she saw Santana staring at her and thought that the rustles she heard while in the bathroom were Santana perving on her. Riddick was on top of Santana's ship, looking for the ship's nodes using the mirror he stole from Dahl. Afterward, he went inside the station, slowly sneaking up to Santana, but Dahl came in. Santana and Dahl had an argument, and Santana suddenly attacked Dahl. While Dahl was getting pinned down on the ground by Santana, Riddick was above them, seemingly ready to attack Santana. When Johns came back with his men, Larkspur and Moss, they entered the station and saw the others observing the message Riddick left on the cabinet where the nodes are kept. Johns learned that Riddick had stolen all of Santana's ship's deep space communication, and now wanted to check on the nodes they kept inside the cabinet. Johns also noticed bloodstains, which Dahl said were from Santana, whom she beat up. Santana went to open the cabinet, but failed multiple times. This instilled fear in Santana and the others, as more mistakes would cause the device keeping the cabinet locked to explode. Everyone was relieved when Santana opened the cabinet again successfully and saw that the nodes were still inside. Moss was then given the task of guarding the nodes, but when he was cornered by Riddick, Moss was too scared to do anything. When Riddick left, Larkspur noticed Moss acting weird, and the latter was out of himself as he told Larkspur that he saw Riddick. Hearing this, Larkspur checked the cabinet and found that the nodes were gone. They went out to look for Riddick, but the latter had shown up in front of them, dropping all his weapons and trying to strike a deal with the two groups of mercenaries. He told the mercenaries about the danger that the rainstorm would bring, but they didn't listen to his warnings. Instead, when Riddick turned his back on them, Santana tried to shoot him, only to get attacked by Riddick's jackal pet. Riddick ran to save his friend, but got sniped by Dahl. Riddick could only watch as his friend was killed by Santana before he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was chained, and John was sitting in front of him. Johns told Riddick about the ship that his son used to send Riddick back to the Slammer. That ship sent a distress signal, and John wanted to know if his son survived the crash. But Riddick didn't answer properly. Instead, he turned his attention to Santana, promising to kill the guy once he escaped from the chains. Johns tried to ask Riddick again, but the rainstorm had reached them, and just before Santana could behead Riddick, they heard the Cyclops alarm, indicating that it detected something. They went out to check what the Cyclops detected and saw the planet's monsters coming their way. Larkspur started shooting at the monsters but got impaled by the wall. The mud alien that had impaled him started smashing her against the window, breaking it. The others then began firing at the monster, and Moss, who strayed away from the group, got pulled out of the ship. The group cautiously looked around the ship when they heard Riddick laughing. Riddick told them to free him so he could help them escape, as he was the only one who knew where the stolen nodes were. Johns agreed and moved to free Riddick, but was stopped by Santana. Santana attempted to attack Riddick, but the latter kicked him away with his free leg. When Santana stood against the wall, Riddick kicked the machete towards Santana, cutting the latter's upper head off. The others were shocked by what they witnessed and decided it was a good decision to free Riddick. They all went out to retrieve the nodes Riddick had stolen. A mud alien wrapped its tail around Vargas's leg and Diaz killed it, but Vargas still fell to the ground, gasping for air as the mud alien's venom killed him. Using the bikes in Johns' ships, Riddick drove away, followed by Johns and Diaz, while Dahl and Luna stayed behind to guard the ships. On their way to retrieve the nodes, Riddick was fighting aliens while Diaz and Johns were riding close to each other. Diaz rode his bike beside Johns and crashed Johns' bike over an embankment. and Johns fell. Johns could hear the aliens snarling, and he cautiously looked around for them. He was surprised when he heard a whistle and realized it came from Riddick, who was sitting on his bike watching him. Riddick offered Johns a ride, and the two of them went to where he hid the nodes. While Johns was digging for the nodes, he revealed that he didn't abandon William, John's son, who seemed intent on killing himself. He explained that William was addicted to morphine and even wanted to kill a kid to save his own life. Riddick had a problem with it and stabbed him before leaving him for dead. Johns couldn't believe that his son was the bad guy, and using his distraction as a chance, Diaz hit Johns with his gun, knocking him down. Diaz then fought against Riddick, but lost in the end as Riddick killed him with his own melee weapon. But as Diaz died, he fired his gun and hit the remaining bike, disabling it. Riddick and Johns had no choice but to run to the station, fighting the mud aliens on their way. Riddick was severely wounded by a mud alien and fell to the ground. Johns decided to take both nodes and ran back to the ship, abandoning Riddick. When he reached the ship, Dahl asked where Riddick was and seemed hesitant to leave Riddick, but she still obeyed her boss anyway. Meanwhile, Riddick climbed up the rocks and fought against mud aliens on his way up. Riddick was struggling, as not only were the rocks slippery due to the rainstorm, but his wound was still hurting him. Riddick was left with no choice but to face the mud aliens head-on. When a big mud alien pinned him down, Riddick yelled as he tried to push it off. Suddenly, the mud aliens were shot, and Riddick lay low as the mud aliens were ambushed. When it was done, Riddick looked up and realized that it was Johns who had come back for him. The ship hovered on top of Riddick, and Dahl went down using a rope. She straddled Riddick and attached the harness to Riddick before gesturing to John to pull them up. Riddick used the other ship, and they left the planet. Before he could leave, John blocked Riddick's ship, and they talked to each other for the last time. Riddick told them that sooner or later they would all have to head home, and they might meet each other again then. Riddick praised Johns for being a better man than his son, and two unusual allies bid farewell to each other as Riddick flew away, departing from Johns, Dahl, and Luna. In the epilogue scene, Crone was seen kneeling on the floor, praying in front of the window with his eyes closed. He stopped praying when Riddick pointed a blade at his back. Riddick questioned Crone about Vaco, but Crone refused to say anything about Vaco's whereabouts. Crone then started rambling about Vaco having kept his word and that Vaco had become a deity. Seeing as it was useless to keep on asking Crone, who was talking cryptically, Riddick decided to just kill him and approach one of his former consorts instead. Riddick gently grabbed the woman's chin and raised her head up, seeing the scars the scared woman was trying to hide. He promised not to hurt her as long as she didn't lie to him. Then he asked if Vaco was alive or dead. The consort stared into Riddick's eyes with a hint of a smile, answering that Vaco was both alive and dead. Riddick approached the window, staring into the galaxy, as he remembered Vaco telling him that he was going to achieve transcendence no matter what.